Jeremy York, and this is your Week 2 NFC South breakdown. It was a very interesting week for the NFC South, as once again two of the teams played each other. The New Orleans Saints were against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in what a lot of people thought would be very one-sided. However, this Tampa Bay defense is really good. They may not be able to get their offense together a whole lot so much this year, but they've been in two really close games. However, they ended up losing this one 16-14 to Drew Brees, who made the last minute heroics as they had shut him down most of the day. But 16-14 is a very close score. It's very close to what the first week was for Tampa Bay as well. But let's break down that game a little bit. For the most part, like I said, Drew Brees and Sean Payton were they were still throwing for a little bit of numbers, your typical 300 yards for Drew Brees, but this Tampa Bay defense was doing a good job of containing him and keeping a lot of the receivers from breaking out. There was no real breakout rusher yet, and pretty much even numbers as far as the running backs and their rushing yards for the New Orleans Saints. All three, Mark Ingram, Darren Sproles, they just, for the most part, they all had about 20 or 30 yards, which is not really what they're after, and they need to have a breakout with a couple complementary pieces, because Darren Sproles can be used in a lot of other places. Mark Ingram is a good goal line guy, but they've just got to step up and start playing a little better. They did have Jimmy Graham, who had 179 receiving yards this week with a touchdown, the only touchdown that Drew Brees threw, with only 10 catches. That's a 17, almost 18-yard average per catch. This kid is just unbelievable. He's by far in the top three, possibly top two with Gronk out in the league right now of tight ends. But the New Orleans Saints do have the game this week is against the Arizona Cardinals, and that is in the Superdome in New Orleans. For the most part, I do see this one as probably going to be pretty one-sided, even though Arizona does have a much improved defense, especially the pass rush. But I think for the most part, my player that you need to watch this week that I think is going to come up super big is safety Roman Harper. I think it's not that necessarily that he's due, because he always makes a lot of big plays, but I believe he's going to be one of the key pieces and the key components to them shutting down the Arizona offense, which in turn is going to open it up for Drew Brees and Marcus Colston and especially Jimmy Graham to be able to put up a lot of points. I see them, no joke, I'd say easily they should win this by 2 scores. On the flip side, Tampa Bay has been pretty interesting this week. They do have the upcoming game against the Patriots, which could be kind of interesting because the Patriots are struggling, and with Tampa Bay's improved defense that seems to be keeping them in games, this could come down to a field goal, actually. For the most part, I believe I'm going to side with the Patriots on this particular game, but Tampa Bay's week has just been kind of, I guess chaotic would be a good word. It's pretty much a typical circus to be down in the southern parts of Florida. Deshaun Goldson was initially suspended for this week's game. That was overturned to an Ndamukong Suh-sized $100,000 fine by the NFL. A lot of Tampa Bay guys were kind of alarmed that such a major offense, or that was considered such a major offense. Well, for one, it was an illegal hit. He was very aware of the illegal hit. These kind of things happen, but he has a history of doing this. I do believe he's had about 12 personal foul calls since 2010, which leads the league. Once again, I'm gonna take the side of him not being a dirty player, just like I did in Ndamukong Suh. I think they just play with an intense vigor that it's hard for them to adapt to this newer style play of trying to hit a different way when their entire lives they've been hitting the other way. I think very much you could put former Falcon Dante Robinson in the same boat. They just hit hard, and they're used to just making the dynamic tackle as opposed to just trying to wrap somebody up. But hopefully they're able to turn this around and everything, because Goldson was a great pickup for them. It gives them 2 shutdowns in the backfield, or in the back end of the field, to where nobody can really break out wide receiver-wise against them. Hopefully he can try to make some good passes, some good plays, and keep the big passes from happening. But to me, the issue with them is obviously not the defense. The defense is doing pretty well. How long is this leash for Josh Freeman? And I could sit here one way or the other and tell you why Josh Freeman is the answer or why he's the problem. For the most part, though, how long? Because we've seen a lot of other teams already try to go for broke or already start playing for next year. At some point, they've got to determine if Josh Freeman, who is in his contract year, is going to be the starter for the rest of this year, or if they're going to try to sign him long-term and keep him around, or if it's time to sit him on the bench and try somebody else. It could be Orlovsky. They could trade for somebody. They got Mike Glennon. I mean, you don't draft a quarterback without at least considering them some sort of playing time. But at least Tampa on offense, the quarterback is the issue there, but they still have Doug Martin and Vincent Jackson who are continuing to make plays, and they are the playmakers. They're still producing. Just if they can produce and put these kind of numbers up with a kind of probably lower than middle of the pack, I'd say bottom third quarterback right now, if Freeman can't step up, then I think they're forcing their hand to have to do something. But like I said, they are against New England this week, and I'm sure if Revis is healthy, I think I would put Darrelle Revis and try to send, I guess you would put maybe Aaron Dobson would be who Revis would cover to try to shut him down, and especially if he's healthier or if he can play a little better than he is. Not that he's playing bad, just at the current moment he's not the shutdown that he was. Maybe Deshaun Golson can pick up the other side of that and get on Julian Edelman. Although I've seemed to, my guess on that is they're going to put a cornerback or possibly even a linebacker on Edelman. Could be a definite mismatch. Brady could exploit it all day long. We'll have to tune in and find out. But your player to watch for Tampa Bay this week, to me, is the right defensive end, Adrian Claiborne. I think he's going to come up real big in the game, and in the same way that I said Roman Harper would for New Orleans. I think Claiborne's going to do something just really dynamic that's going to change this game a little bit. Moving on to the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons, I hope, are taking notes from the Atlanta Braves. As much as the team is dinged up and a lot of them are injured, they lost 2 players to the injured reserve earlier this week, as they lost Croy Bierman, which pretty much was their only pass rush, and they lost fullback Brad Ewing, who finally gets a chance to play. He catches a pass, does really well, and gets hurt on the play. Both of them are going to be out for the season. They have linebackers that are dinged up. They just hired 2 more. I mean, if you've watched the first couple weeks, I think the only reason they're 1-1 right now is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has pulled an elite quarterback status. To me, the new definition of elite quarterback is when your team needs it, they put you on their back and they carry it the entire way. Matt Ryan's play has been spectacular. If he can get some of these guys healthy and Roddy would stop being a decoy, I know it's not Roddy's fault. If Roddy White was more than a decoy, that's going to open up Julio Jones, the emergence of Harry Douglas. You still got Tony Gonzalez. Their run game, to me, is what needs the most help on the offense. Just in the simple fact that you added Steven Jackson, now he's hurt. Even when he was there, though, the best he did, he had 1 run for 50 yards, and the rest of the time it's 3 and 4 yards. If you were going to do that, you could have kept Michael Turner. But this week, they're at Miami. I actually have Miami favored in this game just a little bit. I'm not picking on Falcons at all, but I think they're a little too dinged up to try to compete with a team that's currently 2-0 and playing pretty well. Ryan Tannehill's starting to really throw the ball. But Tannehill's going to have to worry about free safety Thomas Deku. Deku, to me, is one of the unsung heroes of this Atlanta Falcons team. He can lead this defense, and I think he can start shutting down Mike Wallace and Brian Hartline. But I do favor the Miami Dolphins just slightly over Atlanta. Don't shoot the messenger there. I had to pick one side or the other. I just lean this way today. And finally, the Carolina Panthers. Don't panic. You're 0-2. We've only played 2 weeks. What does that mean? There's 14 more games. You don't need to panic for the simple reason that Cam Newton is still your quarterback. Cam Newton is one of those guys that as long as he's healthy and as long as he's on the field, he gives your team a chance to win. We've also saw the reemergence of D'Angelo Williams. We saw Greg Olsen starting to catch a lot more and really get involved, and we've also seen Steve Smith start to return to some of his better days of glory. The way everything's starting to evolve and everything, Carolina's going to start winning games. How many, I don't know. I believe my preseason was somewhere, I think they're going to have somewhere around 7 or 8 wins. They could be close to 500. I think anybody in this division has a chance at least 500, with New Orleans and Atlanta probably being higher than that. But to me, middle linebacker Luke Kuechly, he had some breakouts in the preseason. I think he's going to start really racking up some numbers. He's actually one of the more younger, unsung heroes of this league as far as he's going to be the defensive team leader, and not just because he's a middle linebacker. That's not the default position. Just a lot of times that is where your main signal callers are. But I think you got to watch that guy. This week against the Giants, I do believe I favored Carolina over the Giants just because the Giants are having a big problem. And if you watched the show previously this week on Endzone, I said that the Giants are one of those teams that if they don't start trying to right the ship now, they're gonna be a lot further underwater. But so to recap real quick, I've got Carolina over the New York Giants. I've got Miami over Atlanta. I've got New England over Tampa Bay, and I've got New Orleans over Arizona. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you next week.